Hi there.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Oh, maybe I'm muted. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh, would you make me host?
Host or co-host?
Whichever.
I think I made you a co-host already.
Okay, and I think we'll have Mary be a co-host too, so she can help out.
Okay. So yeah, I've already made you co-host. I'm just gonna step away for a second to use the restroom and do some other things, get myself comfortable before we
Oh,
start.
yeah, absolutely. No worries.
Okay. Be back in just a minute.
Hi, is that Mary? Jonathan David? Or is that Jonathan?
Yes, it's me trying to figure out how to work this computer. Trying
Here.
not to, I got enough medicine on me now. Finally
Oh,
got the doctor to order something for me for my pink eye. So maybe by the end, my eyes won't hurt.
that's terrible. Children,
All right.
children. It doesn't show. Oh, but you're muted.
So my red eyes don't show.
No, just your pink cheeks.
Just my pink. No, that's helping too. I probably is strep too.
Oh, great.
So
And
that'll
I,
that'll probably be
I
my
need to put a
Thursday meeting.
mask. I think I want to put a mask on for this meeting. Can I do
Yes, you might have to. That's
that?
why I keep voting for more meetings. I was the healthy one. Don't ask me how I got sick.
I'm going to stop for a second because I've got to get myself a glass of water. I'll be right back. Oh, did I just lose everybody? No, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Mary, would you be timekeeper for comments? Is that you? Yes? You got to unmute yourself.
Yes, I will.
Okay. And if there are people who are making noise that are unmuted, if I don't catch it, can you mute them or bring it to my attention and I'll address it?
Yes, I'll mute them.
Okay. Very good. Get some more light in here.
His computer is slow as heck too, so
More light, I'm not in the shadows.
Greetings, Conservation Commission.
Hi.
Jill.
Oh. Is Carrie there?
Yes, I just got back.
Carrie, if I'm using PowerPoint and I have it in slideshow view, is there a way for me to reduce it? So I can actually move her, it's gone full screen on me. Do you know?
Are you talking about like the PowerPoint itself, like for you to maneuver back to view the Zoom?
Yeah, and so I can see the Zoom. I can't.
Are you
it-
using a MacBook?
I am using a MacBook.
Try if you take your 3 fingers and place them on the mouse pad, and if you move forward, I think you should be able to see everything that's open on your desktop.
Okay, so if I'm doing this, okay, let me just go back. So I'm starting from here, play from the current slide, and then go 3. Oh, but then
And then you can click on the Zoom, and it should take you to the Zoom.
yeah, but I can't see both at the same time. Oh, now I can see it. All right, I am gonna screen share and see if this works.
Learn something new every day.
That is true. All right. Is this working for everybody? Can you guys see it?
I
Yeah.
can see it.
Fabulous.
And you're still able to see what you need to?
Yeah, well, sort of. I can see the people on the sidebar, so that's good.
Okay.
So maybe I'll put it on speaker view. Okay.
You gonna take that down or leave it up?
Who, me?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it up because I'm gonna go through some, I have some slides for us to look at. Well, I hope our commission remembered at 6 o'clock.
Well, they do have 5 minutes, so for all of those late people. So Carrie, am I set up so I can
Oh,
invite people too?
now you are.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the closet, I think. Hi, Robin. So I'm seeing a couple people who are not identified. Wondering if you could, I see a John. Could you let us know who you are for the minutes? Okay. And then I see a Bob. Going once, going twice, and I see a Joseph's iPad. All right. Sandra's iPad. Could any of you willing to identify yourself for the minutes?
Yeah, Nick Yarmack, 18 Wyola.
Okay, thank you. How do you spell your last name, sir?
Yarmac.
Great. All right, and if you're signing on, new people, if you are willing to put your name on your profile, so for our minutes, that would be much appreciated for our land use clerk.
Madam Chair, Bob here. I think I may have been knocked out of the meeting.
Okay,
Identifying as Bob Douglas.
okay. Carol, put your name up. I can rename you. Is there anybody else that wants help getting their profile changed? We can change it.
Yeah, so I'm Mary Jo Johnson. I'm on as Melody Chartier though, and I don't know how to change this. Because I'm at her computer.
Okay. Right here, Melody, I can do that.
Thank you.
I think if you look through, everybody's here now.
Okay. Yeah, we got quorum, so we're gonna start the public hearing. Welcome, everybody. Tonight is a public hearing that we're opening to review a draft wetlands protection bylaw the Conservation Commission has been studying and working on. We're going to have a few introductory remarks that I will make, and then we will get into allowing public comment and to the best of our ability, answering questions. Just to get started, I'm trying to advance the slides. So this is kind of what the evening is going to look like. A few minutes, I'm going to talk, and then we'll have public comments, and then the commission will have some final discussion amongst ourselves. We have a public comments policy for public hearings, so I just want to review that with everybody. We want to have an orderly meeting, so please do not speak until you've been recognized by the chair. Please keep your profile on mute so that we're not distracted by background noise, and use the hand raise function if you'd like to be recognized, and wait until I call on you. If you're accessing on a phone and you can't raise your hand, it's okay to interrupt and speak out and ask to be recognized, and then I will know that you want to make a comment, and I will call on you when the time is right. We're asking people to limit their initial comments to no more than 2 minutes, and Mary David has graciously agreed to keep track of that, and we will give you a 30-second warning so you can wrap up, but please don't go over 2 minutes. We'll allow repeat comments and questions based on time availability. Want to make sure everybody who comes tonight has an opportunity to at least make one initial comment. In general, please try to be concise and stay on topic. And if you only wish to support what someone else has already said, you can say, I agree with what so-and-so said, and that is perfectly fine and will mean just as much to us. You don't have to restate it if you're just, I'm sorry, I'm in a little trouble with my PowerPoint. It keeps moving on me. Okay. And we will answer questions as best we can. And if we don't have time, we will be putting up a frequently asked questions handout at a later date before the special town meeting. And I would just like to direct everybody's attention to the webpage we created for the bylaw, because we put a lot of educational materials up on that website. So trying to advance the slides. Okay, we're going to be talking a little bit about what the bylaw does. And for those of you that are a little new to this, I want to just put up this slide and I may come back to it because it has a diagram that kind of explains a lot of what we call resource areas, which are the protected areas that wetlands protection bylaws serve. So, there's scientific definitions for all of these different things and standards for how we delineate them. But just as you can see, there's things like flood zones and buffer zones, freshwater wetlands, land subject to flooding, riverfront area, there's bank, and areas that we call upland, meaning that they're out of the wetland area, but they may be significant for the wetlands functioning. And we know Shutesbury has many, many wetlands, and that wetland protection is important for us because we all depend on the groundwater for our well water and also our septic system functioning. So water quality and water quantity becomes very important to us. And we have many unpaved roads that are subject to very costly repairs when there's stormwater runoff, if the water is not being managed, and if wetlands aren't being managed properly. So there are many issues that affect our community, both individually and as a town. I wanted to make a little comment, and I'm having trouble with my slide, about what value wetlands have for us and what are the public services that they provide, because they're not just nature for nature's sake. Well, that's also important. They also provide free services for us, including things like storing carbon, creating climate change adaptation zones and resilient zones, storing and controlling stormwater and protecting our properties from flooding, filtering out contaminants and pollutants from stormwater that could impact our roads and our drinking water, supporting biodiversity and critical wildlife habitat, protecting us from wildfires. So having wetland zones are barriers to wildfire impacts during drought periods. Wetlands also provide localized cooling effects that protect habitat, but also protect us. And they protect our many roads that otherwise could be subject to flooding. I am going to do something a little different because this is not working for me, though. It's going on with the computer. So hold on one sec. I have to get out of screen share. I'm going to start over again. Give me 1 second. Sorry about the issue. All right. Go back to screen share. And I think it's right here. Okay. Can everybody see the slide again? Get rid of this stuff over here. Okay. Can people see this? Yes? Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so how do wetland bylaws work? I just want to explain that for people who haven't been to these hearings before. State law, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, is something that is administered by all conservation commissions in Massachusetts, and it provides minimal protection standards. But as we've heard from experts time and time again, these standards have not evolved with current advances in environmental science and climate change science. And towns across the state have adopted local bylaws to protect wetlands, or ordinances, they're called if you're a city. And out of the 351 communities in Massachusetts, 220 of them, so about 63%, have adopted their own local wetlands bylaws in order to be more protective, or to have standards and resource areas that are not protected under state law. We won't get into this, but we're talking tonight about a bylaw. We're not talking about regulations. And I know that's a little confusing, but regulations are adopted by the commission. Bylaws are actual statutes that are adopted by the legislature, which is in our community, our town meeting. So the voters of Shutesbury adopt bylaws, and the plan is to have a bylaw available for a vote at the special town meeting this January 16th at the Shutesbury Elementary School in the evening. I don't know the exact time. Our current bylaw, which was adopted in 1987, has been subject for some discussion this year as we were updating our regulations, and there were concerns that perhaps the language in that bylaw is outdated. And the commission has agreed that a new bylaw would be the best approach. The severability clause in our existing bylaw means that even if there is a passage that is outdated, the other provisions are still valid and enforceable. But again, if we can make the whole thing work better, I think we're all in agreement that that would be the best approach. So at the request of the select board, we drafted a new bylaw. We based this new bylaw on the model MACC bylaw. MACC stands for the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners. Why are we doing that? Well, the MACC is the preeminent resource for conservation law and policy and trains conservation commissioners. The model bylaw that they published in 2006 is served as the gold standard for virtually every other bylaw in the state. It's been vetted by MACC's attorneys and scientists, as well as town councils for hundreds of other communities, and has been approved dozens of times, if not hundreds of times, by the Attorney General's office. So we can trust that that language is proper and legally acceptable, and has also scientifically valid. In 2023, however, MACC and the McGregor, Leger and Stevens law firm, in conjunction with some other stakeholders, published a set of updated bylaw recommendations in 2023 because the MACC model was published in 2006 and hadn't changed since 2006. So our current version of the bylaw that we are presenting tonight includes both language from the 2006 model and this updated climate resilient language, as you'll see in a little while. The development process was that we looked at dozens of other communities' bylaws and ordinances, focusing particularly on newer ones that have been adopted in the last 10 years. We looked at the model bylaw and the climate resilient project that I just told you about. The draft that we're looking at tonight was developed by myself and Janice Stone, who is a professional wetland scientist, conservation agent, a past Shutesbury Concom chair, former board member of MACC, and she was the author of our original bylaw. And Beth Wilson as well, who is a professional wetland scientist and a commissioner, and has worked as a professional conservation agent. We also had a legal review by the McGregor, Leger, and Stevens law firm. They had some very minor edits, which we have incorporated into this draft, but by and large, they approved of the draft that we had created, which is great news. And now we're here. Okay. So what I was thinking of doing, and we can talk a little bit about this, is that I have a comparison document that I'm going to pull myself out of screen share here. I have a comparison Word document side by side that compares the current bylaw with the new bylaw. We can look at it that way, or we can look at it through some slides, which just kind of summarize it. So I guess I'd like to hear from the commission which way you would like to do it. We can go through the summary slides and go back to that comparison document if we need to.
I think a summary would be good.
Okay. All right, we good with that? Somebody is not. Who's talking, please? I can't see, Mary. That's Scott. Scott, your sound is messed up.
Miriam, you're muted.
Okay. Jeez. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so we'll look at the nuts and bolts, comparing what would be staying the same and what would be changing is really the question, the old versus new. So in both bylaws, there's an initial section called the purposes. It is why we have the bylaw. What is the reason for protecting resource areas? We're not protecting resource areas just because we are. We're doing so because those resource areas provide services and values to us. So the values section or purposes is very important. We're recommending taking out aesthetics and historic values because those really aren't wetland values. They're not scientifically based values. We're in older versions of bylaws, but we don't usually make decisions based on those things. They're kind of softer, squishier, more subjective values. There's some minor wording changes with some of the values just to make them align more with how these terms are used now. And we're adding some new values, including protection of biodiversity, mitigation of adverse effects from climate change, carbon and greenhouse gas storage and sequestration, localized cooling, and rare species habitat, including rare plant and animal species. These 5 are either in the MACC model or they were in the 2023 advocated language from MACC. Any questions? Okay, next section in the bylaw is the jurisdiction area. So the jurisdiction area is where do we have authority? You know, where on the land do we have authority? So, you know, it's defined by the resource areas that we are protecting. And so resource areas are different types of wetlands, but there are also buffer zones and land around wetlands. Going back to this diagram for a second so you can see what that looks like. And by and large, we're not making major changes to this. So we're not changing protections for freshwater wetlands, rivers, streams, land underwater bodies, or land subject to flooding. None of those are changing. And we're not changing the protections for the 100-foot buffer zone, or as we are calling it now, the AURA, the adjacent upland resource area. That is a protected resource area under our bylaw and under almost every other bylaw in Massachusetts. It's one of the ways in which bylaws are more protective than the state law because the state law doesn't protect the buffer zone. And 100-foot buffer zone is fairly standard and we're not proposing changing that. We are adding banks and vernal pools. We're calling those out, but they were already protected under the current bylaw. It's just that back in 1987, those were kind of subsumed within these larger, broader categories of freshwater wetlands. And in recent years, now people specifically talk about bank and the characteristics of bank, and so we're adding bank. But bank was always protected anyway. And we're adding the 200-foot riverfront area, which is a 200-foot zone around perennial streams only, not intermittent streams, only perennial streams. And we're doing this because it's protected as a resource area under the state law. It wasn't in 1987, but it is now. And for the sake of consistency, we're just making this bylaw conform with the state law on that matter so that things are consistent. There's also a section for exemptions. We're keeping most of the same exemptions. We're adding an exemption for agriculture because there was a 1991 law that preempts local regulation. And we're also adding an exemption for mosquito control work that could be done in a resource area under state law because, again, state law should be preempting that, local regulation for that. We don't want to be interfering with those projects because of the public health implications for them. Also, we're adding some clarifying language that some minor activities under state law may be exempt in our regulations. We've already done this in our 2023 regulations. We're just adding this language out of an abundance of caution and to make sure that everybody understands that we have the authority to do that. We're adding a new section altogether that is not in the MACC. So this is a little deviation from the MACC model. We're adding a small projects permit. We had talked during our bylaw regulations process about administrative approvals for small projects that don't require a regular RDA or NOI. And we do have a process put in place in our regulations for that, but this would be creating a subtype of permit for it. We would still use our regulations to spell out the procedures and criteria, but it allows us to permit very small projects very quickly, particularly in the outer 50 feet of the aura. And there would be no requirement for abutter notifications or legal notices or public hearing. There would just be a site visit and a discussion at a regularly scheduled meeting, and then we would approve things. Or it's, we could even possibly in some circumstances approve things without a public meeting. Depending on what the regulations decide. So under applications and fees, there are some minor wording changes based on what's in the MACC model. And more importantly, we've added the language for how you assess fees for consultants under a state law called MGL Chapter 44, Section 53G. 53G is already authorized. The commission already has 53G authority to use consultants under state law, but the language in our old bylaw was outdated and it needed to be brought into conformity with what current requirements are for that. In the section on notices and hearings, we are recommending changing the abutter notification requirements to allow people to use certificates of mailing instead of certified mail return receipt. People could have a choice of which to use. This would save applicants, if they choose to use this, a lot of money because certificates of mailing are very inexpensive. You don't get a return receipt card back. It does mean that the mail goes to people's homes and they don't have to go pick them up at their post office, which, you know, in some ways may actually be a boon to people who don't feel like going to the post office to pick up certified mail. And we're making a minor change at the abutter notifications. Only need to have a brief description of the project, not the actual project plans, because our current bylaw says it has to include the project plans. And we certainly are not expecting people to send big site plans to every abutter. We always post those site plans on our webpage before public hearing, so they're always available to the public. And plans can be inspected at our office or digital copies provided upon request, and hard copies can also be provided upon request. This section also has some language from the MACC model that allows for public hearings to be postponed with applicant consent. Because there could be some circumstances where, because of timing issues, the 21-day requirement for a public hearing is impractical. But again, it would have to be with applicant consent. If the applicant didn't consent, then the commission would just have to find a time to meet within those 21 days. On the section under permits, we've added some new language from the MACC model. We've essentially using all of the language from the MACC model bylaw, which includes clarifying language about cumulative effect and hardship waivers, and also performance standards. We're adding a performance standard for evaluating projects' impact or relevance for climate change as well. That comes from the 2023 MACC model. So the performance standards or presumptions, which are in this section, come straight out of the MACC model. It allows the commission to look at cumulative adverse effect in some circumstances. It allows us to use the standard of avoid, minimize, or mitigate as a standard when looking at projects, which is similar language that we have in our regulations. So it would be bringing our bylaw and our regulations into even closer conformity with one another. The regulations may include no disturb areas or buffer strips or other safeguards. There's a section around riverfront area that basically has standards that align with the Wetlands Protection Act standards. So those would be in uniformity. And there's information about the commission being able to, under some circumstances, to require a wildlife habitat evaluation. We already have that authority under state law. We want to make sure that the bylaw kind of mirrors some of those things. And vernal pools. There are definitions in this bylaw for what is a vernal pool, and we have definitions and standards in our regulations for vernal pools, but there's also information about how a presumption can be overcome. So if somebody says, I don't have a vernal pool, and the commission says, well, we think you do, what kind of evidence and what kind of expert could be used to overcome that and show that perhaps it is not a vernal pool and should not be protected. Again, that language is in our regulations as well. The little section on regulations, there's really no major changes, just some clarifying language about what goes into a regulation. And as an aside, I'm confident that we can update our new existing regulations very quickly if this bylaw is adopted, because in some ways we built the existing regulations off of MACC standards. So I don't think there's going to be any conflict, and we'll be able to do that and readopt the regulations. Well, I believe the procedure is we're going to have to adopt the regulations again. We have a new definitions section. There's a number of definitions in it. Some of these were taken from our regulations. Some of them were taken from the MACC model. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over all those. Many of those are in our regulations. So what are the next steps? We have had this review from McGregor, Legere, and Stevens. There may be further revisions based on feedback tonight. The commission will either tonight or sometime soon be sending the final draft on to the select board with our recommendations. And then some version of this is going to be on the warrant for the special town meeting. So it's really going to be important for people to come and vote and ask questions at the special town meeting. So just in closing, I just want to make a couple comments about how I think this new bylaw will benefit residents. I think it will preserve the current protections and will align with our regulations. Some aspects of it will reduce costs and application burdens on applicants. There will be no changes to waivers. Waivers are still allowed and frequently granted to help landowners use their properties when they can't meet all performance standards. We do this all the time with small lots near Lake Wyola. And as a new standard, we'll be able to think about climate change and climate change impacts and have some of the tools necessary to prepare for the future and what the future might bring to Shutesbury, including droughts, extreme weather, temperature rise, flooding, possibly future housing development, and water scarcity issues. And for more information, I'm just going to direct your attention to our website. And this PowerPoint is also available on our website. Thank you. Okay. So at this point, I'd like to open this discussion up to members of the public. And if I don't see your hand raised, okay, Michael. Michael Takara.
Yep, I got you. I just had to push the button. Thank you, Miriam. A couple of comments. One, I just wanted to appreciate the Concom. I think this is really comprehensive. I've read the bylaw a few times now over the last couple of weeks, and it all seems very reasonable to me. And I guess what I've told people is this feels like it's a win-win. You know, that we've gone through bumps and things like that in the last year, but getting a new bylaw that everyone can agree on is a good thing. So I support this. It seems like the vast majority of people in town would want to have protections for these things. I do want to commend you on the small projects. I think in particular, you know, that's a specific way of making things more flexible and less expensive for people who have small projects. And, you know, although I'm not as close to this, you know, there's always this rumbling about having to jump through hoops, so making the hoops less big and less expensive are good. And then I think the last thing is just to say that it seems like this approach makes a lot of sense to adopt the MACC model, which other towns across the state have done. That is the gold standard that the select board has been supporting, and now the Concom is written. It seems like the confluence meets the needs of the towns and respects the comments that have been going on for the last few months. So the other thing I would just say, not representing the two committees, I'm on the planning board and the Energy and Climate Action Committee, but both of those committees rely on
30
wetlands
seconds.
bylaws. And I think this is a good tool that we can have at our resource. So I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you. Okay, more comments? If I don't see your hand, other commissioners can let me know. I see Rachel Rahorka.
Hello, I'm a town resident. I was just wondering, how can we get a copy of that PowerPoint, please?
It is up on our website. So if you go to shutesbury.org/concom, there's a bunch of tabs and one is a bylaw, what says wetland bylaw. And that's where I have put up this PowerPoint as well as comparison documents and some educational materials. It's all up there, and the draft bylaw as well.
Thank you.
And hi, Rachel. Any more comments? Matteo.
Hi. So first of all, I'm really glad to see that the bylaw is being updated. I was surprised to hear how old the bylaw actually is, and that it's being updated to address the reality of the climate crisis, which I guess we only need to look outside today to see the weather, to see how real the weirdness is, and that it's reducing the costs and barriers for applicants. So I sent some comments in writing about particular parts of the bylaw. My question goes back to your earlier discussion about the process, and maybe this exposes my ignorance about it, but I'm wondering, you mentioned MACC and McGregor and Janice Stone. I'm wondering, beyond those people who was involved with helping to draft this, if there are other groups, if input was solicited from other town boards or committees, and Michael mentioned the planning board and ECAC or the Lake Wyola Advisory Committee, if anybody else helped provide input or was consulted on this, either in the town or beyond it, people or organizations that might have provided some input on this.
Well, we shared drafts, both earlier drafts and the more recent draft with all of the town boards. I went to a planning board meeting and an ECAC meeting in order to answer questions and, see if there were any concerns or questions. I don't believe we've had any formal written comments from any of the town boards, but we have sent them documents multiple times. In terms of who we consulted, many of us have been going to MACC trainings on how to update bylaws. I just went to a training 2 weeks ago with Attorney McGregor. I think maybe either Janice or Mary David was at that one. Mary, were you at that one? So, we've been going to trainings and statewide meetings of conservation commissions where there are scientists and consultants and lawyers available talking about how to update bylaws. And so we are relying on that guidance, and the climate resilient website that I keep referring to is the go-to place. So there was a big, long, year-long process with MACC and the McGregor, Legere and Stevens law firm, as well as some other major stakeholders and scientific consultants in Massachusetts. And they put together this very comprehensive website about how to update bylaws and also zoning bylaws and stormwater bylaws to make them more climate resilient. And that was developed to be a resource so that we don't have to spend thousands of dollars on consultants. That work's already been done for us. And so, you know, we have been advised by Attorney McGregor that we can take this to the bank, that these are very solid recommendations, have been very thoroughly vetted. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, Rita.
Miriam, I just wanted to make sure, well, maybe you haven't seen it. So Greg McGregor did send some answers to questions that you had raised, and the email was received at 6:04 p.m. So I know it responds to questions you had, but it might affect some of the wording. So you might want to take, I don't know if you can pull it up or if you want me to.
Give me a sec.
Sure.
Was this from, it says MACC model answers or?
Yes. Yep.
All right, let me see. Hang on.
So there were questions about the presumptions, about the use of the word perpetual, and then the 21D wording.
Okay. Yes. You know what? We'll talk about that. I'll get to that later, but thank you for letting me know that.
Okay.
I'll bring it up later.
All right.
All right. More comments, questions? Mary Lou.
Hi, Mary Lou Conca. I live on Wendell Road. And again, I want to thank the commission for all your work. I know that you're going through some difficulties, but you know, everything you're doing with this PowerPoint has been very helpful. And as a Shutesbury resident, I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions or comments? Got time. People speak up. Don Walcott.
Hi, Don Walklock, 215 Leverett Road. I'm a certified New England soil scientist, a Mass certified arborist, and advisor to the Conservation Commission, as well as a previous member of the Conservation Commission. I'm a little concerned about the idea that the vote on this very important new bylaw be jeopardized by placing it into two article questions. And I'd like to know if the town is prepared for the sort of backlash from that sort of a mistake. It leaves the town open to lawsuits, and I feel that if we have no town bylaw, if say the new bylaw does not get voted in, then we're not able to rely on the old bylaw any longer. It may have been written in 1987, but it certainly encapsulates the spirit of the law that was created in the day. I was an undergrad at the time. Janice Stone was a graduate student at the time. I just wanted to comment on that and my concern that the town is leaving itself liable.
Thanks. Let me just clarify that because there's been some very last minute updates that were less like coming in like just in the last hour before our meeting. So we were having an email exchange with the town administrator about what the warrant articles were going to look like. And we got an email saying that the plan was to have two warrant articles. One would be to have the town consider rescinding the current bylaw, yes or no. And then the second one would be to adopt the new bylaw. And I raised some concerns, Don is raising some concerns about having it worded in this way. It's still unresolved, I think, unless we've gotten emails in the last half an hour. But it sounds like maybe there's a path forward where this could be incorporated into one warrant article. The reason is, as Don points out, you know, it could be very confusing to people, and it could lead to a potential outcome where perhaps there would be no bylaw at the close, that the voters would rescind the current bylaw and not vote to adopt. What a lot of towns are doing is they have it incorporated into one article to rescind or to replace the bylaw with the new bylaw. So if it doesn't pass, you default to the old bylaw, which is already in place. If it does pass, then it's replaced. And I sent the select board just before this public hearing an example of a town that did this. I think it was Long Meadow, and I gave them the exam, or Danvers, I can't remember which. I gave them the actual language that they used in their warrant article. You know, this was all half an hour before the public hearing, so I haven't had any time to do any other research. I'm confident I could come up with other examples of towns that have used similar language. It's just a matter of trying to find these warrant articles, which sometimes aren't on town websites after a couple of years. So I had gone through a whole bunch of the Attorney General's office's municipal law review and had looked at the last 5 years of reviews of new bylaws, and had noticed that there were a number of towns that did this, where they had it all in one article. But again, the letters from the Attorney General that either approve or disapprove the bylaws don't necessarily give you the warrant language. So Rita, do you want to respond to this? I see you have your hand raised.
Hold on 1 second, I just lower my hand. Yeah, I think my understanding is the initial recommendation had come from McGregor, because it's the way a lot of communities do it, but certainly the select board has not voted on the warrant articles. We'll be doing that meeting tomorrow night and doing the final warrant. So I don't see an issue with incorporating it. And I think Becky had looked at the language that you had sent. So yeah, we're just doing some last minute Becky's doing some last minute scrambling around getting the language in such a way that it's acceptable.
Okay. I will, if I have a chance and I'm able to, if I can find a couple of other examples, I will send them on.
I don't think that's necessary. I think we have one that was approved by the Attorney General. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I think the key thing was that in that example, the full text of both bylaws were in the warrant. So that's probably the safest thing to do, even though it's.
Yeah, we'll check with counsel. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, Bob Douglas.
Great, thank you very much, Miriam. I just wanted to say that it's been quite a journey for the commission, and I'd like to thank them very much for taking that time. The bylaw that you've chosen, MACC, kind of gives you a bulletproof nature. All of these things have been tested in other towns and other legal climates. So I salute you. I hope the town meeting supports your article. You know, obviously put a lot of time in it. It's a great product. So thank you.
Thank you. You can put your hand down. All right, any more comments? Well, Bob, did you have more comment? No, you don't. More comments? Carlos.
Hi, Miriam. So I second Bob. It's been a really long process and difficult at times. And I want to congratulate you and the commission for consistent, attention to detail, a lot of research, really diligent in the work that you guys did. and an incredible amount of professionalism. And myself as a resident, I am really thankful for the work that you guys have done and the time and the commitment that you have put in seeing this through. And yeah, I do. I'm happy from what I understand about the new bylaw. I have a question. I'm curious why the language about intermittent streams could not be included. If there was a technical question or a legal question, why intermittent streams are not part of protected areas.
We had them in the draft originally, and the legal review suggested they weren't necessary, that we could spell that out in the regulations.
And this was a legal review by Attorney McGregor?
Or from his law firm.
And is it because they are the same thing? Or
I
you remember?
don't know. I don't know all of the thought process that went into why he was recommending removing it. You know, again, that it could be something that the commission could discuss, whether we want to bring it back in out of an abundance of caution, because it was in the original bylaw. So the original bylaw protects subsurface streams, and that is a funny word, but we have clarified that it was always intended to be intermittent streams, that was what Janice meant when she wrote it and when the town voted on it in 1987. So in our new regulations, we define intermittent streams and how they can be protected and how they're identified. So I don't think it is our intention to not protect intermittent streams. I think we do want to protect them.
So I want to just express here my full support to including intermittent streams in the bylaw. And the reason is, it's very simple. It's because I have a well, and because intermittent streams run into the water that feeds my well. So I have a personal interest in having the intermittent streams that run into my well to be protected. And the reason I am at all interested in this, it's about the quality of my water. And so anyway, you have my full support.
I'm looking at the draft, and it does include intermittent.
It does?
Unless this version that I've got and this document is wrong. Somebody else want to take a look, make sure. I'm looking at a side by side. Could somebody else look at a draft and double check? The draft I have has it.
If it does, then I feel a lot more
anybody chat?
sure.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna
find. Is it listed in the first? I don't see it listed in the first section under purpose.
It would be under resource areas, under jurisdiction is where I have it, but hang on one sec. I'm looking. It says streams, intermittent and perennial. So
okay,
what page is that?
That is on, I'm looking at the clean version that's up on the website and is on page 2 under jurisdiction A, subsection A.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
But that's a good question. Let's see, who has their hand raised? Amanda? Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi. Yes, thank you, Miriam. I would also just like to thank and congratulate the commission on all the hard work that they've been doing over the last year with the regulations and the new bylaw. I've been following it very closely. I've learned a lot about this sort of thing. It's very interesting, and I really appreciate all the time and effort you've put into it. And I'm glad to hear that the issue for annual town meeting, the warrant article will be 1 rather than 2. I think that would be a mistake to make it 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, David Buchanan, I see hand raised. Is there somebody else besides him? I don't see anybody else. Okay, go ahead, David.
Hi, this is actually Jill Buchanan, here with David. I just wanted to also basically say, similar to what Amanda was saying, is that thank you for all your hard work. I think this is an excellent draft bylaw. I'm also very glad to hear that the consideration is to not rescind the current bylaw in order to pass the new bylaw. I think that would be a big mistake. Thank you.
Just as an aside, one of the things that was a concern about doing it that way is that if you had vote number 1 and people voted no, not to rescind, and then you had vote number 2 and people voted yes to adopt, then you would have 2 bylaws, which you can't have. So having them within one article avoids that potential collision of worlds and destruction of the universe as we know it. Okay. I see Elizabeth. I think you're muted.
There we go.
Yes.
I realize I don't have a lot of light in this room, but I just want to say that I appreciate how much each member of the commission, time-wise, that you've put in. This has been quite a process that we've observed, and I hope that in going forward, that the way that business is conducted is in a harmonious and willing to understand kind of way, so that any of the glitches and the problems that have occurred in the process of this, that we can ameliorate them and that we can find ways that your sincere and professional way of doing things with the leadership of Miriam can be useful to the town and can be a way forward for as other, the board and the select board and ECAC and all the rest. Yeah, I sincerely believe that everyone is trying to do their best. And how many years has it been in this process, Miriam?
Which part?
In attempting to go through the regulations and then the bylaws in
I
order.
believe that the town, this Concom was looking at revising the bylaw in 2011.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
it's 11 years.
okay. How long have you been chair?
I've been chair for 2.5 years, and I've been on the commission 3 years.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for all of you and Miriam for all the in-depth research and work that you've done. It's not been an easy road, and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
All right, Mary Jo.
So I also wanted to add my thanks to the Concom for doing all of the work, meticulous work involved in putting together this bylaw. And also add a way of comment that there is a lot of public support for the Concom and for this bylaw in particular. I posted a petition on change.org a little over a week ago. And we have right now over 300 signatures on that petition. And specifically from Shutesbury, well over 80 people have signed on requesting that the select board and everyone else support the work that the Concom has done on this bylaw.
Thank you. Are you done? Okay. Leslie Carrier.
I want to also say mucho gracias. Thank you, Miriam and the Conservation Commission. This has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad that we're going to finally get to vote on it. Well done. Thank you, Mary Jo, for the petition. Thank you, everybody here, for bearing with this very, very long process. I'll just add that had this bylaw been in effect, today I wouldn't have witnessed water coming out of 40 Schoolhouse Road from Woodsmith Forestry, ignoring wetlands and doing a clear cut. Luckily, the water went into the road, went into a culvert, but I can only imagine if we don't pass this, how bad it's going to be with more clear cutting in wetlands. So thank you, Miriam, for persevering, and everybody on the ComCom for your support for this.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for the support, but I also, if people have questions or concerns, please speak up because we want to hear those as well. More comments? Janice, since you've worked on this, would you like to make any comments as our consultant? Are you there? There you are.
Okay. I usually like to be in the background, but all right.
Should have made you talk at the beginning. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So I'm grateful for the commission doing all this hard work to update the bylaw, which was written a long, long time ago in another world from where we are now. And between the things that we've learned about wetland protection and different kinds of projects that we could end up in town with, which, is a huge number different than what it used to be. And the whole climate resiliency aspect of it, I think this is a really good update, and I'm really impressed at what the commission was able to do. And I was just sort of a proofreader, so I appreciate all the details and all the reference checking and everything else that went into this. And I really hope that it all goes well at the special town meeting.
You were more than that, but you're also modest. So. Mary, did you want to say something?
Yeah, since if there's no more comments, should we move on to looking at the questions that we got back today?
Well, let me just make sure. Are there any more comments? I don't see any questions. Okay. Let me pull this up on screen share if you give me 1 second. Too many documents opened, so let me get rid of some documents and get to my inbox, which is, I think, what we want to look at. I had it open. Okay. So, here, let me throw this in a different way. Hang on. Put it in a Word doc. So I had a back and forth with Becky with some legal questions. And there were some comments about some language that we added that a number of other bylaws had, and the law firm suggested not using them. So hold on, make sure I'm holding the right document. So this is so annoying. All right, and it's frozen. Okay, it is. Sorry, I'm having trouble. So a document 4. That's what I think I'm trying to share. All right, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So the reasons for the presumptions, I was asking in case anybody from the public wanted to know why we have these added language of presumptions and what the purpose was. And the reasons for the presumptions, the wording and the structure of which are taken from the DEP 72 regulations are stated and explained in the preface to the DEP regulations. In brief, they establish scientific facts that the commission can rely on and applying and implementing the bylaw. That is what presumptions do. They set facts as given unless in an individual matter they are shown not to apply. What performance standards are and do is explained in the MACC handbook. Think of decision criteria to apply to proposals, design specifications to say in words and on plans, and performance standards to impose as backup to specs. For example, the project shall limit stormwater discharges to 1 NTU, but in any event, it shall allow no visible cloudiness or color. That last one is a performance standard. So yes, the language that we removed because of the attorney's advice had to do with perpetual conditions. He says perpetual is a bad word choice as it connotes repeating over and over again, which is not what is meant. It's in perpetuity or forever, which is wrong. Rather, the term words like for a term or for a term of months or years is warranted. If you insist on perpetual, we suggest adding provided such conditions may be included only with the consent of the applicant. And then there was a question about a provision in the enforcement having to do with what's called an alternative to non-criminal enforcement. It's a statute that allows commissions to basically issue a fine in a more informal way. And there is a town bylaw that adopts this provision for the town, but it doesn't mention the Conservation Commission, which is a problem. And he says the wording in the new bylaw is okay, but not great. The ABCD structure is awkward. B, C, and D should be a subsidiary to A. B is not written as per se a violation. Per day sentence. Okay, well, I'm not sure what to make of that since we haven't had a chance to look at it. I think that there may have been a formatting error in the section I gave him because I had noticed that after we sent it that there may have been an extra D. I'm not sure. I have to take a look at this.
Miriam?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is my sound working now?
Yep.
Oh, great. Do you know, refresh my memory on the perpetual question. What was that in reference to? Do you recall?
Yeah, it was a clause that a lot of bylaws have that say that commissions can impose conditions for longer periods of time.
Yeah, and in just reading that too, I'm confused. I mean, I am familiar with many conditions, conservation restrictions that do read that they are in perpetuity. I think they're phrased that way, or perpetual conditions. But I think my understanding of what was referenced there is that that sometimes it's not. I saw what Attorney McGregor had written, that it should be term limited, but sometimes I think some of the conservation restrictions can go on for in perpetuity, and that is what is actually meant or desired for those conditions to remain in place, because the alterations that they're offsetting are also perpetual in nature and remain in place. So
yeah,
that one I would
they're
love to
usually
explore that.
required as mitigation for some other permanent alteration, like you're gonna be building a structure that is massively decreasing pervious surfaces for infiltration. And so you're gonna have to have a buffer strip, a vegetated buffer strip, or you're gonna, whatever it might look like. And
And
I
that
think,
is my
and I think
point.
with a perpetual condition, if the conditions change, let's say the house burned down and was converted over to a lawn, then, you know, the applicant could go back to the commission and say,
That's ridiculous.
excuse me, would you please,
I think Mike had something to say.
Mike, did you have something you needed to say?
No, keep going.
So I think I agree with Scott. You know, there are times that perpetual is what is meant by what we're doing.
Yeah, I guess what I was getting at is I think the conditions, whatever they happen to be, are if they're set forth as mitigation, they're set forth to offset the impacts of that project. And the project itself is time limited and only has impacts for a certain period of time. Absolutely, that makes sense to me. But if the project is of one where, you know, we're not setting a term for it, someone builds a house or something else that we're not saying that that's going to be removed in any period of time, then the offsetting mitigation measures should correspond to that.
So that's a really good, interesting question. And I guess, you know, I'm, you know, what I'm taking from this is that perhaps we need to send this back for greater clarity, that if that particular language was a problem, you know, what would the alternative look like? How could we make this improve upon it in a way that would be acceptable and would still meet some of the needs? Rita, did you?
Yeah, I just thought his last, the last clause or last sentence there, it said, if you insist on perpetual, we suggest adding, provided that such conditions may be included only with the consent of the applicant. And I believe with, you know, one of the concerns, and this goes back a ways, but it might be something you want to address with McGregor, is that if you put something in perpetuity, it could be looked at as a taking and therefore not be legal. So I think that's the caution, but you might want to verify that with him.
I think we had talked about that, but I think the conditions we're talking to really doesn't go with that piece of it, because we're not really taking anything. It's more that what is done needs to stay done.
It doesn't matter. That's a legal term, a taking. So I'm just saying, I think that's worth pursuing with Greg.
Janice and Beth, I'm curious, and maybe Bob Douglas, because you're a conservation specialist as well. What are your experiences in other communities with perpetual conditions?
Yeah, so the one that comes
is that many towns use them.
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind for me often actually is with certificates of compliance, and it is something like you know, not using chemical fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides within the buffer zone. And that's the kind of thing, like if there's a new house that's built, project's done, so we're issuing a certificate of compliance. But with a certificate of compliance, you can add a few conditions. And so what I've seen before is a little section that's perpetual conditions, and that's one example. And again, I mean, if in the bylaw we say something like the applicant agrees to it, you know, that's the kind of thing that, yeah, maybe you could ask, does the applicant agree with this? You know, we're going to put this on the certificate of compliance. But I guess that's something to discuss with the commission. Do we want to add that the applicant has to agree to it or not? But certainly other commissions put perpetual conditions such as that one, either in orders of conditions for the actual projects or more often in a certificate of compliance.
I'm mindful of a project that was permitted many years ago in Shutesbury, where there was, I think, a large quantity of wetland that got filled. I may get the facts wrong, so please forgive me if I'm getting them wrong, but there were some alterations to wetland. And as a result, the Conservation Commission required that there be marker pins delineating some areas of a no-build zone. And that every time the house was sold, those markers had to be refreshed. And I don't know if you guys were all on the commission at the time, but I remember going out in the woods with Penny Jakes, and I think Robin was with me. Robin, were you on that site visit? Yeah, and we were looking for these metal markers, and some of them had fallen down, and you know, it took a little research and hunting to figure out and refresh where those all were, because the property was getting sold. So, and they wanted to get a certificate of compliance, I think. So, I know that there has a precedent here in Shutesbury where those kind of conditions have been put in place.
Yeah, and the certificate of compliance gets recorded. It's sort of like kind of erases the order of conditions, what is originally recorded during the actual project. And then the certificate of compliance gets recorded, and it sort of stays with the property. So having some kind of some perpetual conditions, that's where you would put them.
Okay. Janice, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have never run into someone suggesting that you couldn't do in perpetuity. I've seen them on orders of conditions for, I don't know, 30 years or something, and it's like the things that Beth was saying, or that you were saying, if there's, to permanently mark a wetland, if it's in, let's say, an open area or in a forested area, and it may be hard to tell that location in the future in the terms of distance from the house and other activities, or in exchange for allowing work in the buffer zone, people agree to leave a certain area unmowed, or replanted with natural vegetation or something like that. So I was surprised at that. I don't know. I hadn't heard that before, and I suppose there must be some legal reasons, and I just don't know if it applies to. I thought that sounded like it was more like a permanent conservation restriction thing, but I suppose you could say that telling people that they can never build in this 50-foot buffer is something similar.
Okay. Well, let's table this until we're finished with the public comment period, and then we can come back and circle back to talk about that, and we can take a look at the draft. Unless there are any more comments about that particular topic. No. Any other areas of discussion that we should make sure we make room for here? Okay. Are we ready to move on and sort of close the public comment period? I want to make sure, we're only getting to do one public hearing, which is unfortunate, but it's just because of the timing with the holidays and everything else and the special town meeting coming up. So we really want to make sure that if anybody's here who has any concerns or questions, that this is the chance to kind of let us know about them.
I know Mike before said that he might want to come back and make a comment. I wasn't sure if he did, but now might be a good time to do that.
I mean, if there's no more comments, I think we should move on to the next.
Okay. All right. So I am going to suggest that we move back. I'm going to pull out the draft. If I can, give me 1 second. I'm going to try to find the version where we had gone through the edits with, if I can find it.
So are we closing out the hearing then?
I don't know. Are we going to have this discussion? I guess we are. So we'll have to have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion. We close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
Okay. David?
Aye.
Font, aye. Harrington?
Aye.
Khan?
Aye.
Wilson?
Aye.
So give me a
Excuse me.
sec. I'm gonna open up. Okay. This is the edited version that has all the comments and the track changes. Oh, I hope the track changes show up. Okay, maybe I can get to. all markup. Ugh. Where are they? Oh, now they're showing up. All right, so the
But
section,
could we look at, yeah, the two sections that he commented on?
yep, I'm gonna pull that up. Was afraid for a second that the track changes were not showing, but I believe it just took them a little time to wake up. All right, so here's the draft, the marked up draft. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, and it's and I believe that all of the track changes will show up. Yep. So the section that the question and where the red is where Attorney Stevens, this was Nathaniel Stevens, added language, and where the blue cross out is where he crossed something out. So, you know, there were some minor wording changes, didn't change the meaning of it. It just, there was a section here about amendments that he didn't think was necessary and could go under regulations and didn't belong. There were a few things where he said, you know, this just doesn't belong in a bylaw, it really belongs in regulations, and that's fine. And then we had noticed at our last meeting that there were two paragraphs that were a duplicate, that somehow something got added, got copied. So the section, if anybody can help me out where that section is, because I'm looking for it. Here it is, I think. Not recommended. Okay, this is where he's not recommending that the commission record if someone fails to record. And then I was a little surprised about also because I know that I thought that sometimes commissions did do that. I think I heard from DEP that commissions could do that. So I was surprised that he suggested not doing that, but this is it. The conditions imposed in any permit issued by the commission may include a condition that certain land or portions thereof are not built upon or altered, filled or dredged, and that streams are not diverted, dammed, or otherwise disturbed. And the feedback he said, and I got this from several bylaws, just Lexington, Townsend, Stowe, Arlington, Wayland, Amherst. It's a very common phrase in a lot of bylaws, which is why I thought it made sense. He said it could be problematic and challenged as a taking of land without compensation. So a taking of land means that we're doing something that is making it impossible for somebody to enjoy their property rights. And that's unconstitutional unless due process procedures are followed. So he recommended deleting it. And so my initial instinct had been, okay, I'll take it out. But then I asked the question, what about for continuing or perpetual? So can somebody help to go back to his comments? Let me see if I can pull it out.
I mean, it sounds to me, I mean, when we get to stating perpetual, the applicants have already agreed to do whatever it is that we've put down to do. It's not a new thing. It's basically just saying that they need to maintain whatever it is that we've done, correct?
Well, I mean, somebody may say, an applicant may say, I don't want to have a buffer strip. And you're forcing me to have one. So
that should come out in the discussion. By the time we get to making something perpetual, everything has been agreed on.
Well, that would be my hope. Absolutely. I don't have a problem. So what was the language rather than, well, we don't have the word perpetual in here. The language what was the substitute language that they're suggesting we could put in? Is somebody have it?
That was it, but that was if we kept perpetual, which we don't have, right?
Yeah, so the language that they're suggesting, if we keep it in, which I think might be a good idea, is to add, provided that such conditions may be included only with the consent of the applicant.
Yeah, I agree, because I, for all the, the restrictions that I'm familiar with that are in perpetuity, they're not it's not taking if it's agreed to by the landowner. And I think what Mary's point is spot on, is that when we're going through this process, and if we have an applicant who is wanting a project and we're trying to offset the impacts of that project through some sort of action, then we're in agreement that we're going to do that as an offset, and it's not time limited perhaps. And that would be the condition that's recorded. So I think that modification's good, and I think we could keep it in with that. But we should, to Rita's point, I think we should go back and just confirm that with the attorneys, but it seems like that would be taken into account what they're suggesting.
So, and I see somebody's got their hand raised, so we'll get to that in a sec. And I'm finding the track changes annoying to me right now, so let me turn off track changes so that I can see what I'm doing. Provided, and let me change the font. Give me one sec. So we are in, what size font are we in? We are in size 11, Garamond. Why is that? Oh, why can't I change it? Okay. All right, get rid of the quotes. And I'm going to highlight this because we're going to be asking for another. Melissa, I see you have your hand raised.
Thanks, Miriam. I just have a question on what happens if the applicant does not consent at that point for that to be in there? In their permit.
I don't know. I guess it would depend on the circumstances.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the examples that I'm familiar with, and I think it would be there. If you had an applicant who's asking to do something that would impact a wetland, and we're suggesting in working through it, if the only way to offset those impacts were to do this project, and they weighed it out and said that they didn't want to do that, then that would be their choice, and perhaps that wouldn't be approved.
That would not be approved. Is that what you're saying, Scott?
That's what, like the project that they're looking to accomplish, where this would be an offset for that project. I mean, that would be the natural outcome that I would see if that were to happen.
And I don't think in all my time, which again is limited, that we've ever gotten to that point. We've always managed to figure out a way to resolve the concerns before we ever get to that point. I'm going to say something, sorry.
My question was around the I guess a little bit of offshoot of what Rita had said, where you had been discussing this vaguely said in perpetuity, if the homeowner or landowner didn't agree to it not being built, so they might not get the permit at that point, is what you're saying?
They can
Or
appeal it. They can appeal it.
compromise.
Well, or there'd be a compromise, or they could appeal it. I mean, our goal would be to find a compromise. That would be what we would like to do. And I think we do accomplish that. I've been on the commission for 3 years. We've never had an appeal. We've had lots of instances where applicants came back to us and asked for amended orders of conditions because they felt like the permit needed to change. And we've always granted those requests. So we really do try to work with applicants. And, I realize that sometimes people are frustrated with the process, but we're doing our best to kind of balance the interests of these laws we're administering and also being mindful of what people are trying to do with their properties.
And just a quick follow-up, how many times have you told someone they're not able to build upon or alter something in a after a project is done or a permit's been issued?
Well, you mean this current
If you-
configuration since I've been on the commission, Melissa, or
That, or if you know of any, because you would be monitoring past ones.
Well,
So
I'm not aware of all of the past permit conditions. I know anecdotally of one that I heard about when I first came on the commission. I was just telling you about one. And I can think of one since I've been on the commission where it was in riverfront area. And there are very strict requirements for how much development you can do on riverfront area under state law. It wasn't even under the bylaw, it was under state law. And there was more alteration than state law would require. So in mitigation for that, we required that the applicant put a no disturb zone marked with markers along the bank of the river, so that there would remain a vegetated strip to the river. But that was under state law, so this bylaw wouldn't have made a difference about that.
okay. Thank you. Those answered my questions around that. Thank you.
Okay. Any other, so is this look all right to you guys?
Yeah, so I'm okay with that, with the adding in their recommendation.
So I see a hand raised, Mike S.
Michael.
Unmuted, okay. Hey, first of all, let's back up. And Scott, please tell the truth. You did put perpetual conditions on my property. I did not consent to them. And if you go back, you can look at the videos. They're all on the Shutesbury website. And you can see what you did. And so quit denying and Miriam that the actions you took in the past, they were wrong.
And for the record, I did ask for our conditions to be amended and they were denied, Miriam. I have
By
that,
you,
I
Miriam.
have that in an email.
So start telling the truth.
You know, I hear what you're saying, and you brought this up at another meeting, and what I would like to suggest, since this is really about your particular project, and you know, we do want to hear from you and talk to you, but I'm not sure that tonight is the appropriate time because we don't have this on our agenda. So what I would like to do is invite you to come to a meeting of your choosing, and let's talk about it.
That's fine, Miriam, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to put my hand up. Hello.
Yes,
That's Joe.
yes, go ahead, Joe.
I'd like to have a chance to talk at some point with the board, and probably not at this meeting, because we have other things on our property too that we'd like to review too. But I don't think at this point this is the right point for it. And we will address it at a later date.
Sure. You're welcome to. And, you know, I'm sorry if I misspoke. You know, we're doing our best tonight, and I don't have a spreadsheet in front of me that gives me a list of all the different permits. And honestly, that was an oversight. It wasn't intentional. So I don't think anybody here is intending to be dishonest. We're all doing the best we can. And as I said, I don't have a comprehensive list of all the permits that have been issued that have perpetual conditions. Some of which may predate my tenure on the commission by decades. So I think we should move on. All right. Are we content with this section, commissioners?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to move down to the 21D section because there were some comments. Let me just find 21D quickly. All right. So Attorney McGregor said A, B, C, and D shouldn't be a thing. this was language, I think, that is primarily coming from the existing bylaw. And, you know, I had asked in the legal review if there was a better kind of framework to use, since I recognize that this part of the bylaw, this was actually an amendment to the existing bylaw. So this is language that was added like in 1990, I think. So not, you know, not recent. And somebody, let me see, the comments from was that the 21D wording in the new bylaw is okay, but not great. A, B, C, D structure is awkward. B, C, and D should be a subsidiary of A. I think that's right. I think that A,
So it should be like A1, A2.
no, I
Is
think,
that what he's saying?
I think it should just be ABC. I think this was a formatting error. I think it was always meant to be ABC.
Oh.
Sorry about that. So,
That makes sense.
so, and I think I corrected this at some point, but so I don't know, per day, and the per day sentence in D is surplusage, duplicating what is said in A. Okay, as an alternative. I don't see how it's duplicating. A separate offense, and each offense shall be punished by a fine of 50. Each day thereof during which a violation continues may be considered a separate offense. I don't think it's said above. It's said above in the in this section up here. So under regular enforcement, it says each day. But in this section, it doesn't. That's why I think that's why there is this language. I mean, what if we just move it and put it here?
Some of that already there
Actions.
before that $50 part?
What?
Isn't some of that already there that,
It's up
about-
here. It's up here.
Yeah, but in this next paragraph too.
Each of the
purpose-
following actions, omissions, and occurrences shall be considered a separate offense, and each such offense shall be punished by a fine of $50.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
should we, why don't we just say, and whoa, we'll get rid of A, that just popped up on us again. And each day or portion thereof, during which violation may constitute a separate offense. How's that? Too long a sentence. Well, why don't we make it separate sentences? We could say a separate offense, then each day make him to a separate offense. And then just say each such offense. Does that work?
Yeah, you have a different type size, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah. Okay.
And then take the comment out of C.
Yeah,
Okay.
get rid of, make sure I'm on Garamond. And then. Oh. No.
Okay.
Ugh,
Oh,
tell me. All right, I'll fix this. All right. I'm not gonna do it right this second. After we're done, I'll fix that formatting.
mhm.
Does that look all right to you guys?
Yes. Was there
Lee-
anything else that we needed to address?
I don't know. I was there looking at this list. I mean, there wasn't a better, so the deal with 21D is that we can't use 21D until the town revises its 21D bylaw, which is not going to be doing this special town meeting. They're talking about putting it on the warrant for the spring.
And that's fine.
Also, the guidance that we received was that we can't use a permitting fees until the town adopts the bylaw, I think it's called Chapter 40, Section 22F as a bylaw, which is going to be on the warrant for this, this January. And then the select board has to vote to approve the fees. So we'd have to set up a meeting with the select board and review our rationale for the fees in order to have permitting fees. And we're not collecting them currently because of these unresolved issues.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the bylaw as amended to move forward with.
Okay. Is there a second, or do you want to have discussion?
A second.
Okay, any discussion about this? Okay. David?
Aye.
Mont, aye. Harrington?
Aye.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
So,
So I'd also like to, and I don't know if this is a motion, but I'll make a motion that we do one article and not two, that we don't get rid of the old bylaw and then vote in the new, that we combine it.
okay. So, that would be, I think, we would be making a motion to make so we're gonna be sending this on saying we are, sponsoring this bylaw and recommending it. And what you're suggesting is that we send a request to the select board saying that our recommendation is that they use one article as opposed to two separate articles.
Correct.
And do you want to have any more discussion about what that and what our rationale for that would be?
I could just mention, there was an email that came through at 6:03
Okay,
from Becky, and she offered two possibilities for the article reading. And one of them is to see if the town will vote to repeal the old 87 bylaw and adopt the new 2024 Concom wetland bylaw, or take any other action there too. Or to see if the town will vote to amend the old 1987 bylaw, blah, blah, and replace with the new 2024 Concom wetland bylaw, or take any action relative thereto. So it looks like she said she'll give you more alternatives in the morning, but this is the draft sort of language.
so the language that I saw from other towns is a little different. It was worded to see if the town will vote to amend its general bylaws by replacing the wetlands general protection bylaw with the following language. So,
okay,
that was how it was worded. And then you have to have the text of what is being removed and what is being added. So it's not really, in my mind, it's not really, you're not removing a bylaw. What you're doing is you're amending that bylaw, and you're amending all of the bylaw. It's under the, a lot of towns have all of their bylaws packaged up in one document. Ours, it's all piecemeal, but they are part of a body of bylaws. I think that language from whatever it was, Long Meadow, I think it was, or Danvers, I can't remember which it was. I think that looked good, and because it passed the AGO, it was approved by the AGO, I would rather go with that rather than have this whole thing fall through, because
I see what you mean. Yeah, that would be good.
I mean, it's wordy, I get it, but I think she is suggesting that we have to have the text of the two anyway.
But Becky's there if you want to ask her if she's there.
Becky, did you hear what I was just saying? You're muted.
So what Janice read was what was originally on the warrant. I never had two articles in the warrant. And I always had it as one. So the first thing she read is what the select board already looked at, and that what Donna looked at. I've sent an email to Donna citing your concerns and having her put together something, and we'll be in touch with you back and forth in the morning. Okay.
Okay. So, and the other question, Becky, that there were two other questions that I had was the legislative history. Because if we're amending in this way, then the bylaw is continuing, we're just changing it. So we do need to have the legislative history. And I wasn't really sure, I don't have all of the information. I have the bare bones in the document, but I don't know, I don't have the article numbers from 1987 and 1990. Grace would have to look those up. So that would be a Grace correction that we need.
Okay, and McGregor had mentioned something about that whole issue too, so, but I think I shared it with you already. Okay, so I'll confirm that with you in the morning. I'll go back and check all the other notes and
So
put them in.
what
So
I
the
would
other-
like,
so the other
so what
thing
I'd
that
like to suggest, is that we make a recommendation, and then if the commission is willing and comfortable to authorize me to make any further, to communicate with the town if there's any further back and forths that need to happen about this. Becky?
There was one other email that had been, I think, a little earlier that I don't know if you saw yet. It was about the chapter 53G. And he had, and I figured anything, you might not even want to change it, but he was suggesting that the 53G language be replaced by a table. And I don't know if you were ever familiar with what table would replace the 53G.
Can you tell me when you got that email came in?
It should have been about around 4 o'clock, I think, 4:30.
Don't the comments that we already looked at from the lawyers say that?
Okay, no, I didn't get a chance. I'm sorry, I never read this email. Okay, so what it says is, it was noted what one paragraph in the Gregor red line was not deleted. Here's what McGregor said about page 4. Yes, it should be deleted. The state statute speaks for itself. It mandates the 53 general bylaw that the town needed to adopt. Has the town adopted a 53? I believe it has.
Yes.
Okay. The reason is that state and local fee procedures are carefully prescribed by law. These Concom 53G rules should be separate from the bylaw and bylaw regulations. It's okay to mention the 53G bylaw cross-reference, rules cross-reference, but in our experience, it causes problems if the bylaw invokes 53G and tries to assert more power to set these. So I'm super confused about this because this is taken verbatim out of the MACC model bylaw. We didn't insert anything. We just took it straight out of the MACC model. And then I added a question about it. And then Nathaniel Stevens said that we didn't need a table. I asked if we needed a fee table like the Arlington bylaw has. And he said, no, that's outdated. So let me.
So we need clarity on this issue?
We sure do.
Like,
Let me
okay.
pull up, I'm gonna pull up the document with the comments so we can see them. Give me a sec. Let me
So
find it.
I have an email from Nathaniel that I had missed the first time, and he has a different answer than McGregor.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
hearing that.
he said, we did not recommend deleting the paragraph. My recommendation is to not include. That is, add a specific fee table as a commenter had asked about, as they had seen in the Arlington bylaw.
Could you just hold on 1 second? Because I'm looking for a document and I can't sort of listen and do that at the same time. So give me 1 sec. Too many documents open. Where did it go? Oh. Okay, here it is. So this is the edits with Nathaniel. It's a little confusing having different lawyers giving us conflicting information and we're not even getting all the information, Becky. I mean, I didn't see that comment from Nathaniel. What I saw, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
show
I
you,
thought I
I'm gonna
was
show you the
compile
comments.
these three. It was all at the very end.
Maybe the comments aren't even in here in this document. Yeah, this shows the comments. They're just not loading. Can you guys see this? Is
Yes.
this showing up? Okay, so I am looking for 53G. All right, and the comments. Are not showing up in this document. Oh, because I have no markup. Sorry. Now they're going to show up. Okay, so I asked him. This is not it.
I think it's page 4. You want to go down.
So I asked him, I think here. The comment's not showing it. Ugh. I may have deleted the comment because I thought we. All right, so I can't find it, but the point was that I asked him about this because I knew that Arlington had a fee table. And he said, no, don't have a fee table, that's outdated in the Arlington bylaw.
And that's what we when we reviewed all of this, that's what we said.
So I'm just feeling like this is getting very confusing because we have some time pressures here and I don't have anything from Nathaniel Stevens changing his opinion. And we would then have to develop that fee table and decide what the proper fees are. And I just don't feel prepared to do that at this point.
I mean, I think we go with no table and decide that at a later point. I believe it's supposed to be along with the select board.
So how strongly, I mean, do McGregor and Stevens talk to each other?
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting these, conflicting pieces of legal advice here.
So you guys had already resolved this once, right?
Yeah, that was why I emailed you and suggested that maybe a phone conversation would have been helpful because I think that these email communications, especially when we're getting them late or we're not getting all the email communications that you're getting, it's like the telephone game. Things are kind of getting lost in translation, I fear.
I think that's the only email that you have not yet seen. And as it was part of another one, I sent the McGregor final one. And I hadn't seen this one until I went back through and was trying to find it.
So are you sending that to us? That one
Yep.
from Daniel? Okay. All right, I'm just waiting. Is it coming in?
Sorry, I too am not. So this is.
I would think it would take a while to develop a table for the 53G because that's usually based upon individual estimates from professionals. So I don't know how you
Well,
do that.
the table that they have is based on the size of the project. And so they have a certain flat fee and then it scales up if for larger, like big commercial projects. I think it had to do with acreage or the cost of the project. And you know, that has been in their bylaw for many years, so I wouldn't feel comfortable just adopting that. I'd need to have some sort of
Yeah.
we would have to have some information. I have not found any other bylaws that have a fee table.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me unless you always have the same reviewer, which some towns and cities do, is they standardly use one reviewer for all their peer reviews. In that case, you know what their rates are. But if you're going to occasionally at least different people, I don't see how you can set a value by the number of acres or the size of the project or something that would be relevant without knowing how much
Okay.
wetland there is. And
All right, so
stuff like
from
that.
Nathaniel, it says, we did not recommend deleting that paragraph about 53G. Sorry for the confusion. My recommendation is to not include or to add a fee table.
Good.
Okay, so we're all good. So what we have is the right language. We don't have to delete anything and we're not going to add anything.
Right.
All right.
Okay, are we right? Is that where we are? Okay. That is good news. I'm glad to hear that. So, commissioners, so I would like to make a motion that the commission authorize me to recommend to the select board language for the article that would include incorporating all changes within one article.
I'll second that.
David,
Aye.
DeFont, aye. Harrington,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
fine.
Aye.
And then the last thing I was going to ask you is, do we want to ask the select board to co-sponsor the bylaw?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask Becky, because she said she was going to bring that forward.
Do we want to make a vote to formally request that of the select board?
If you want a motion, I can. Go
Go ahead.
ahead, Beth.
Not, go ahead. Mary, you were going to make a motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we recommend the select board to be a co-sponsor of this warrant item, along with the Conservation Committee.
Second,
Second.
Second.
okay, David,
Aye.
aye. Harrington,
Aye.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
So finally, last one thing, and I think we're done, is that I have a draft handout. I've got the PowerPoint, which I've put up on our website, but I have a draft handout, which I haven't circulated, which I'm going to send to you. My thought was to try to either 2 pages or maybe 2 pages back to back, so it'd be 4 pages, kind of information about the bylaw. I don't know how much we need to have like educational information about what is a wetland and what is a bylaw and what does the Concom do? Do you feel like that needs to be a part of this, that there needs to be some sort of general community education about at that level?
I don't think so. I think they're pretty clear by this point.
I mean, my only thought would be something that again compares the old bylaw and the new bylaw. Something that you're talking about, something that would kind of almost get handed out for the town meeting, right?
Yeah, but you know, like, you know, do people like talking about resource areas or things, you know, what do wetlands do? What are the benefits of wetlands? Like that kind of informational stuff. You think that's just fluff?
I mean, that's all on our webpage. That's all. I mean, I think hopefully people would come to town meeting having a general idea of that already and know that they're basically voting on a bylaw, and what they want to know is what's the difference between the old bylaw and the new bylaw?
All right, so that I could do in probably a 2-pager. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
But I'll do it as a 2-pager and get it to you. The other thing is, I understand that usually there's a report, Becky, isn't there usually a report that has to be submitted for a new bylaw?
Yeah, often, yes, they have to do, usually you do. I don't know if it's required for Concom like it is for planning board, you don't have as many statutory requirements. But it would be appreciated.
So how much, you know, so that would be like an attachment to the whole warrant, like in the appendix or something?
It typically it doesn't go in the warrant. It would be
Separate
yeah.
document?
Yeah, a separate
Okay.
document.
All right, I'll do a draft and send it around to folks.
Okay, and I guess, when after I said that, I thought, well, like, we're calling it a update to the bylaw. Is that what we're really calling it, right? So even in the flyer that you put together, I guess it shouldn't be old new law or old bylaw, new bylaw. It should more be, these are the updates to the existing bylaw.
Yes.
I just think that's clearer and makes more sense.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and then we can approve that at our next meeting because we're going to be meeting once before the special town meeting. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I think we're ready to adjourn. Thank you, everybody. It is, my clock says 7:53. We're adjourning. Somebody have a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
David,
aye.
aye. Harrington,
Aye.
Con.
Aye.
John. Okay, Wilson. All right, thank
Aye.
you, everybody. All right, good night.
Good night.